My name's Judy Darragh, I'm an artist, and my interest in resale royalties goes way, way back, probably 15 years ago when the conversation first came up. And I had a very good friend, artist Judy Darragh, who was very involved at that stage, working there was a government working party, and they were consulting with dealers and artists and auction houses, and he would be telling me about the frustrations of trying to get this across the line, because clearly there was no will from anywhere to make it work. Dealers didn't want it, auction houses didn't want it, it was too much hard work. So the government at that stage, I think it was the national government, it just disappeared. And then I think it must have been a couple of years ago, just before lockdown, the paper came back up. Labor put it back on the table because New Zealand is one of the last countries in the European world not to have resale royalties. So we're way back behind in the dark ages. And this is a system of paying artists, for their resales that's been going on for, hundreds of years, all through Europe. Australia's had it for years, and we've just been sitting on our hands with it. So the paper came up, and then COVID came along, and it got dropped because the Minister of Culture and Heritage had to deal with a pandemic. So it sat there, and then beginning of this year, the paper came back up again. Labor was very, very keen to get it over, finished, done, dusted. So all the thinking, the old thinking from 15 years ago kind of was redundant, because there was a lot of anxiety about how do we collect the money, the revenue, the paperwork and all of that. But now, of course, it's all in the cloud, it's digital, it's another line on the Excel sheet. So all of that idea of collection is not a problem anymore, and there's already places like Copyright Licensing New Zealand who have already got these systems in place. So collecting is not a problem anymore. There was a lot of a push from the government, especially from the arts ministers. They wanted it done and dusted. So and then I think it was over post-lockdown, there was this huge auction. Was it the Strathern Burns auction? And every time there's a big auction, resale art auction, the auction houses love blagging about it. So it's all over the media, and it's like rubbing salt in the wounds. And we were going, oh my God, eye roll. Here we go again, business as usual. Everyone thinks artists are making lots of money. And it really hurt this time. So I think Dane Mitchell kind of kicked the ball off. And then I got on board, and then Ruba got on board with Equity for Artists. So we kind of got on board. We did some meetings with the Minister of Culture and Heritage. They were really keen. They said, yes, we just need a little bit of help here. So we started talking about it. Arts makers started talking about it. So we sort of managed to get it in the ear and made the argument very clear that this is a no-brainer, that it's a way to value the artists, it's a way to turn over a little bit of cash, especially with generations of families. Like Liz Ellis said, this is an amazing thing for generations of families, long term, so when something like a macaque gets sold, the 5% resale royalties gets put back into the family, the grandchildren. It's a longevity which I hadn't really quite fully understood. So there's that aspect to it of an intergenerational sort of, it's not much, it's only 5% of the resale. So, and I think a lot of artists might say, oh, it's not going to affect me, my work doesn't come up an auction, but it's actually more the ethic and the idea of being valued, and so it's, and I think it's a way we can all support each other as well, support artists. And I think they did the math, there was something came out and they did the math of how much money would actually get put back in, and it was over $1 million or something, or nearly $2 million every year that would turn over going back to artists and their estates, etc. Yes, so that's copyright. So there's artist copyright and resale royalties. So every time an artist image is used for resale, there should be a copyright fee paid, and that is something as well that wasn't being practiced. Caroline Stone has been working with visual artist copyright for years, trying to get that over the line. And again, there was a lot of resistance from the auction houses because, you know, they're going to be stung again because they have to pay a percentage of the price that they advertise the work for on the catalogue. So again, there was a lot of resistance. They wanted to shut the conversation down, and then Copyright Licensing New Zealand, which is the literature body, picked up the visual arts, which was really great, which meant that there was a functioning body and a functioning collection process for copyright fees. So as an artist, you have to register with Visual Arts Copyright. So you Google Visual Arts Copyright or Copyright Licensing New Zealand, you register, and then you're on their database, and then every time an image comes up for resale in an auction, or if it's used illegally, you know, to sell something, or your intellectual property is protected and you will get a fee. So again, there was a lot of kickback with that. Again, auction houses weren't keen on it, but that is now working, and Copyright Licensing New Zealand have been amazing. They're doing these workshops, online workshops explaining copyright and artist IP. So it's all about valuing what we do as artists and protecting what we do as artists. So at the moment, 2024 royalties will be, it'll be illegal not to pay them. So at the moment, in that 2-year window, MCH are now figuring out that process, and they're calling for organisations to operate it. So there'll be a call out for some sort of systems agency to work it. The government is going to fund it for the first 2 years, and then after that they reckon it should be self-sustaining. So they'll take, for example, Copyright Licensing New Zealand takes something like 2% of every piece that they collect, and then that 2% goes into supporting running them. Also, they have money left over, and that 2% is used for writers' awards at the end of the year. So it's like APRA. So APRA is the copyright for musicians. So you enroll with APRA. Every time your song gets sung, you get a little bit of money or whatever. And the same, they take a little percentage when they get the funds, and they fund the awards, you know, the APRA awards. So they take this funding and put it back into their community, which is really cool. And with the resale royalties, if you're an artist and your work comes up at auction and you don't want the royalties, the 5%, or the estate doesn't want the 5%, that will then go into a common fund, and then that fund will be used for maybe scholarships or awards or something. So all the money keeps going back into the communities. Copyright you have to register for, that's a registered thing. Resale royalties you don't have to register.
Oh, okay.
So that's already a given. So your work comes up, your name, I think the auction house will be responsible to, I guess, find the artist, like what you've been doing with your project, Like there will have to be a bit of due diligence about that. Although, to be honest, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe that'll be part of the 2-year window, what they are having to figure out, does the artist have to register for resale royalties? But they've looked at Australian model, which we're very close to, and that was also a 5% as well. So I think because we've come at it quite late in the game, there's a lot of models and a lot of ways that that will be looked at and managed. So at the moment, MCH have got a team working on it, and I think there's an auction house person, a couple of artists, a dealer. So they'll be doing all the nuts and bolts now of how it's going to work. Yeah. For me, it's the idea of seeing artists get money. You know, it's kind of a value thing, like, oh, gosh, artists are actually getting money. Look, they're getting money here, they're getting money there. And it's sort of like a messaging. I don't think it's the amount, I think it's the ethical idea behind it. Auction houses have been creaming it for years and years and years and years. You know, for them it would add up to quite a lot of money. For the artists, it's not much money. But I think anything where we see money going back down to the grassroots, to the artists thing, it's an ethical thing. It's something we have to do to join the world. I remember we were talking to the APRA people about it. They were horrified. What do you mean visual artists haven't got copyright? What you know? And they said that a lot of younger artists join APRA, musicians, going, well, you know, it's not going to be great for me. I'm not getting anything out of it. But they say what happens is as soon as the artists join, they go, oh my God, someone's got my back. They actually feel like someone's got their back for the first time. So it's more of it's a different value, yeah. Mm. Yeah, I think they've set that threshold already. Mm. Well, they've suggested $1,000, 5%. So I have a feeling that'll be what we'll do. That 2-year committee who are consulting will definitely find all that. But I think we'll definitely stick close to other models, yeah. Mm. Well, I think that point you were making, you know, like at what point are you, you know, getting $2 and you're spending $30 to get $2, you know, I think there has to be some sort of...
breaking even.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, another thing I'd like to say is that whole conversation around resale royalties started here at the depot. 15 years ago there was a paper, I think it's still online, that got the ball rolling and gave the history, you know, with the European French history of resale royalties, and it was really, yeah, it started all here. A lot of the collectors, we did try and talk to the collectors. A lot of them weren't aware or were aware or didn't realise. So I think by educating the collectors and the people who go to auction houses as well, and I think that most of them were very supportive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, great. I'm just getting money, yeah. So that 5% is split between the auction house and the seller. So it's only 2.5. So it's quite a minimum thing. I mean, I don't think it's going to cut into the auction house's profits, you know. I mean, I think, you know, every time you make, you know, record sales in an auction, maybe you shouldn't brag about it in the newspaper, you know. Maybe just don't draw attention to yourself, you know. I think that this primary and secondary market are quite different animals, and I think you know, it's not going to be perfect. You know, there's discussions around what happens on Trade Me, you know, people selling art on Trade Me. That's a whole nother kettle of fish, and hopefully that'll be resolved as well. You've got dealers who also sell on the secondary market. You know, there's a lot of, it's not just auction houses, so I guess people will try to, you know, skirt around it. That's whatever, they can sleep at night or not, you know. But I think at the moment, because the auction houses operate with all of that provenance and where it comes from, and so that seems to be the best place to start. And I think, yeah, and I think it's just like you say, having a conversation about how do artists live, you know. We're not all, artists, you know, there's a perception that artists, every time one of those things come up, everyone assumes that artists just make livings out of selling their work on, you know, and we're all okay, you know, but we're not, you know. So there's a bit of education around it, I think, as well, and I think this is a good time to start talking about that. And as I said at the beginning, you know, artists getting money is great, you know. Well, I don't think a lot of people understand the difference, and I think that would be a really good way to start, you know. What is the difference between a primary and secondary market? And, you know, I know that sometimes those big auctions, the primary market gets quite nervous, you know, because that's money coming from their pot, you know. So they get nervous as well. And so I think it's a good way to start a conversation about artists again, you know, how we live, you know, it's not, if you don't have a dealer, if you don't have a high profile, if your work isn't in the business of art, you know, how do you make a living with your 3 part-time jobs and student debt and all that, you know? There will be a regulatory body like copyright licensing, so there will be a body that will collect, etc. And it will be illegal, like they've already stated that. So if you're not paying your copyright, it is illegal. So again, I think this 2-year window, they're sorting out those nuts and bolts. The government will manage it eventually. You know, they'll pay to manage it. I imagine that there'll be somebody that's already operating as a collection agency with has already got those tools, will pick it up. I assume that would be the easiest way, yeah. Well, it might, because there'll be a little paper trail. So this is actually creating a paper trail as well, because you have to declare provenance and ownership, and the seller has to pay 2.5%. So it will create a little paper trail. So I would hope that the dealers will play the game. I think the pressure has to come from the auction houses. So best practice will come from the auction houses, and because they'll get, you know, fined if they're not complying.
And we'll be on a big stage as well.
Yeah, and you don't want your name to get a bit, you know, sullied because you're not playing the game. So I think, hopefully there'll be enough pressure, you know, from the auction houses, and the sellers, and, you know, everyone in the game will be sort of on board with it.